And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Landtroop. I'm the Vice President of Defense here at Capital Factory, and welcome to another Intro to Defense Innovation and Ask Me Anything. We do this Intro to Defense Innovation as a regular programming block every month so that we can explain how we do defense innovation at Capital Factory across Texas and across the United States to existing and mostly new members of our ecosystem. This week, we're going to talk about a special program that we run called Defense Academy. And before we get into the discussion of Defense Academy, I'd like to bring up Rick Lipsey and Bill Robinson from Alamo AFCEA. Rick Lipsey is a U.S. Air Force colonel retired, and he's currently the president of Alamo AFCEA. Bill Robinson is the Director of Strategic Initiatives at Frontier Technology and the VP of Memberships at Alamo AFCEA. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you guys for coming.
Glad to be here, Kevin. Thanks for the invite.
Of course.
Thanks, Kevin. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Fantastic. And you will hear from both Rick and Bill a little bit later after we do an overview of Capital Factory. So, Capital Factory is the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas, the #1 startup state in the U.S. We have boots on the ground in Austin, Dallas, and in Houston. We have our own physical space in Austin and Dallas, and we are currently in the Station Houston in Houston. And beginning in the first quarter of 2021, we'll be in the Ion Houston, which will be in the new Houston Innovation District. Very excited about that. Capital Factory brings together investors, startups, customers, developers, academia, and a whole bunch of other people, over 200,000 people a year connecting to our brand and our space for meetups, classes, co-working, and to find each other. And according to PitchBook, Capital Factory has been the most active early stage investor in the state of Texas since 2013.
Welcome to Capital Factory.
We are glad you could join us here at the center of gravity for entrepreneurship in Texas.
We bring together entrepreneurs, developers, and designers across Texas for meetups, classes, co-working, mentorship, events, and our accelerator program.
At Capital Factory's core, we're all about people and making lasting connections.
We meet the best entrepreneurs in Texas and introduce them to their first investors, employees, mentors, and customers.
We hope that you'll join us again and consider becoming a part of our community.
For more information on becoming a member, head over to join.capitalfactory.com.
Thank you.
Capital Factory is a super unique place. There are lots of accelerator programs across the country, obviously tons of co-working spaces and co-working spaces that target startups, but we do things differently in three main ways. One is we execute what we call the Texas Startup Manifesto, which touches every startup in the state and also provides those startups with access to customers, capital, and talent from every port across the state. Secondly, we are a physical center of gravity, although now we're more of a virtual center of gravity, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But we attract all of those people that are going to help startups become successful into our space, to our events, all across the state of Texas. And then beginning in 2016 and really kind of reaching a crescendo last year, we're a new center of gravity for defense innovation. And we've attracted Defense Innovation Unit, AFWERX, National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the Texas Military Department's Innovation Task Force, several others. But then, of course, the big one, Army Futures Command and the Army Applications Lab being right here in our space. So Texas Startup Manifesto really is the idea that the entire state of Texas can be a market. And it works two ways. It works outward in that we want to reach out and touch every good startup across the state of Texas. And if there's a startup in this state that gets an early stage funding round and we didn't at least see and get a chance to participate in that round, we consider that to be a failure. The second thing is we can connect those companies to everything that they need to grow and scale their companies without having to leave the state. And that's, again, Fortune 1000 customers, that's capital, that's now defense and military customers, and an incredible pipeline of talent leveraging the multiple university systems across the state. And the really great thing is if you look at the geography of the DFW area, Houston, Austin, and San Antonio, you can get from any point on that triangle to any other point on that triangle in 3 or 4 hours drive. And in some cases, you can actually hit 2 or 3 of those places in the same day. And so we teach our startups to treat the entire state as if it's their home city and their home market. So we have a ton of investors that co-invest with us. We bring companies into our accelerator, and then we introduce them to our investor network of over 700 investors and help them raise that next round. We also have a bunch of really cool corporate partners. These corporate partners connect to Capital Factory for multiple different reasons. One is they just want to be part of an innovation ecosystem that's going to help their companies learn how to be more innovative. Two is they're looking for emerging technologies, either to use from a licensing or as a customer, or to outright buy and acquire, and they can leverage those capabilities for their customers. But most of the companies on this slide are participants in what we call the Capital Factory Innovation Council, which is an enhanced membership presence for these large companies because they want to reach out and touch our startups. So as I mentioned, we have physical space in Dallas at the Centrum, 38,000 square feet in Old Parkland, kind of right at the heart between downtown and all the old family office money that's sitting in Old Parkland. The station Houston, currently a Capital Factory presence is in the station, but as I mentioned previously, when the ION opens in Q1 of 2021, we will occupy a prominent space in the new Midtown Houston Innovation District. And there's the ION. Another new initiative for 2020 is a partnership between Gwynn Partners and Capital Factory. So Colin Gwynn is a drone extraordinaire aficionado. He used to be an executive with DJI North America, and now Gwynn Partners advises drone technology companies on cutting edge technologies and applications to make drones better. In partnership with Colin Gwynn, we're launching the Center for Autonomous Robotics right there next to the 360 bridge on the Lake Austin, just northwest of downtown Austin. This facility is going to be really awesome because it's going to bring together a bunch of different startups working on different components of drone technology. So think if you're working on a power pack, or if you're working on a sensor package, or if you're working on analytics, or even if you're working on 5G technology to enable beyond line of sight navigation, if you're working on the autonomy algorithms, any of those things, you're going to be able to find all of the other components that you're going to need in order to build a complete system and test it right there, whether it's in the air, on the ground, or on the water, or even under the water, right there in the backyard of the Center for Autonomous Robotics. So Capital Factory by the numbers, as I mentioned, 200,000 or so participants and climbing. We've got roughly 200,000 square feet of space in Austin, Dallas, and Houston, thousands of members, hundreds of mentors. We have a VIP accelerator program that really is scalable as we reach out across the state to touch so many great companies. We had approximately 90 in 2018, 120 last year, and we know we're going to blow that number away this year as we really tap into the Houston market. Our companies are going to get intros to investors. We have over 700 investors in our network, and our investor relations team curated nearly 3,000 individual one-on-one meetings between our portfolio companies and investors last year. And then, of course, big customers, Innovation Council, and connecting the entire state and things outside of the state to our space and our companies. So what are the types of events that we have done? Well, we did a hack of the drones, which was a drone hackathon that was sponsored by MD5, which is the precursor to the National Security Innovation Network, and Army Futures Command in 2018. We do 100K challenges. In fact, we did a 100K challenge last week. We use a range of different theses for these investment challenges, but really it's an opportunity to bring in a bunch of new companies, showcase some really awesome technology for our partners, and to make an investment in one of these companies and bring them into the Capital Factory family. The one that we did last week was a defense theme. It was in human performance, and the winner was a company called Python Technology out of Boston. Last year, we did a defense 100K challenge using an AR/VR theme, and a company named ZPEG won it. We had a bunch of other companies that showcased that day, some of whom ended up becoming part of the Capital Factory family, doing extremely well. But ZPEG was a really cool story. While they were giving their pitch at the 100K competition, they met a company called CACI, which is a big defense systems integrator. They're on the Capital Factory Innovation Council. CACI and ZPEG ended up doing a deal together earlier this year, and we featured that story at Fed Supernova. So if you missed seeing ZPEG, CACI, and Heather Richmond, the founder of the Defense Investor Network, at Fed Supernova last week, Stay tuned to social media because we are going to start replaying all of those blocks next week, and you'll be hearing about it through LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and wherever you get your social media feeds. Capital Factory is very, very committed to our diversity pledge. We're always trying to make sure that we're including diverse perspectives, diverse backgrounds, and diverse cultures and ethnicities in all of our events, as well as we bring companies into our accelerator. So one of the things that makes Capital Factory different and really cool is VIP visitors that are always coming into our space. President Obama came. Tim Cook of Apple came. Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. Alexis Ohanian from Reddit. And what happens whenever these really five-star luminaries come into our space? Well, guess what? They get demos from our portfolio companies, and this happens all the time. Every single day is demo day at Capital Factory. We've got a bunch of local investors. We've got some investors from out of the state. We've got Fortune 500 company executives. We've got government officials, school kids, and then, of course, military officers from all across the DoD innovation ecosystem. Capital Factory also helps a lot of other accelerators do awesome things. And that's just one list of many of the different accelerators that we have helped. So I mentioned that in 2016, we became a new center of gravity for defense innovation. Well, we didn't become that center of gravity in 2016, but it started there with a visit by Ash Carter, Secretary of Defense, to launch or to announce the launch of the Defense Innovation Unit Experimental. And one of the first two cells was here in Austin. After that, AFWERX came, and they put in a cell on our first floor at our Austin space. And then the Texas Military Department came and launched their innovation task force called TMDX. And Texas Military Department has been helping our portfolio companies connect to a bunch of these DoD innovation programs, such as the AFWERX Open Topic SBIR, helping our companies find customers so they can secure the phase twos and get $750K to up to $1.5 million in non-dilutive funding to build a product for the Air Force. And then, of course, in July of 2018, the Army announced that they were coming to Austin. And in February of 2019, leading into South by Southwest, they launched their Army Applications Lab space on the 8th floor at our Austin location. And we opened the Center for Defense Innovation here in Austin, which is the new center of gravity for defense innovation in Texas and more around the country. So what happened in that first year? So we launched the Center for Defense Innovation. Again, ribbon cutting was February. I consider the real launch of it to be just after South by last year. And the first year being South by 19 to South by 20. And how'd it go? Well, 31 of our companies were awarded more than $63 million from a range of DoD innovation programs. And as we looked back at the end of year one and tried to understand how all of that awesomeness happened, we realized it was really about the awareness of the DoD innovation programs and how they could benefit from accessing those, the information about how to do it, and then the relationships with those folks that were going to help them. This program that you're attending right now, the monthly defense AMA, really is the entry point for that awareness about those DoD innovation programs. And then the information and the relationships comes through things such as the Defense Academy, which we're going to talk about today, but also our Small Business Innovation Research SBIR Accelerator, which we launched our first pilot cohort in March of this year, and it just concluded earlier this month. So as I mentioned, we have a Center for Defense Innovation, but more and more it is becoming the virtual Center for Defense Innovation. What you're seeing there on the right is the production of an AFWERX virtual collider and pitch bowl that happened in March of this year. And last week, we just completed a first of its kind event called Fed Supernova, which was really amazing in the way that it used a bunch of different technology platforms, not only to deliver content virtually, but to allow a bunch of entrepreneurs, investors, government program folks, traditional industry, academia, developers, and anybody else who wanted to attend to connect not only to the content, but to each other. So as I mentioned, the SBIR Accelerator, which we conduct in partnership with a company called Long Capture, and of course, we're totally grateful for the sponsorship and partnership from our initial pilot sponsor, Microsoft. And now I would like to turn it over to Alamo AFCEA. Rick Lipsey, the president, is going to give you an overview of Alamo chapter.
Thanks very much, Kevin. I appreciate it. As most of you all know, there's a big difference between a job and a profession. If you haven't thought about that hard, I would encourage you to do that. And one of the key differences being, if you are a professional, there's an expectation that you're current in your field, that you're part of a professional association, and that you're staying up with new developments and how those might apply to what you're doing. That's what AFCEA is all about, and the Alamo chapter of AFCEA, based here in Texas, provides that function for folks who are in cybersecurity, IT, and intelligence, as that supports national security and homeland security. Next slide, please. We are one chapter of an international organization that consists of 140 chapters around the world. We're member-based, we're nonprofit, and our primary reason for being is to create an ethical forum for the exchange of information. With a lot of the concerns about acquisition regulations and laws, there are concerns about how do government and industry folks talk to each other in an ethical way, to share what the needs are from the government, to share what the up and coming technologies and capabilities are from the industry side. We fill that role. As a non-for-profit, that's why we exist, to create a number of different forums, from monthly luncheons to socials to our big Alamo ACE event that we hold each November. That's basically a conference or trade show that supports that kind of dialogue. In addition to that exchange of information, we provide professional development opportunities. So it doesn't matter if you're young or old, new in your career field or late in it, there are some areas that you can use development in. And so whether that's new technology or whether that's spending time with a mentor, we provide those opportunities on a regular basis. And then we provide thought leadership for the community. As a nonprofit, we do raise money to do these activities that we do, but every dollar that is above our expenses gets contributed either to promote STEM education for bringing the next generation along, or to pay back to our wounded warriors and military families. The international organization, as I said, is worldwide, with about 32,000 members and about 1,600 companies participate. Next slide. So the Alamo chapter is the largest chapter outside the national capital region. We've got over 1,300 members currently. We've donated about $1.5 million back to STEM education and wounded warriors over the last 10 years. And that's been steadily growing. So we're on track to do about 265,000 this year. We have been named the top chapter in our size category in 3 of the last 5 years. And so we're having major impacts, not just here in Texas, but across the nation. Next slide. The growth charts kind of tell the story. So starting with the upper left, the Alamo ACE is that annual conference that I talked about. It takes place the week before Thanksgiving each year in Northwest San Antonio at the La Cantera Hill Country Resort. And so that has grown from its inception in 2008 to about 2,800 members last year. Our chapter membership has grown along with that, as has our net worth and our ability to give back to the community. Next slide. So let me start with the STEM piece of it. We give back, started with college scholarships. We do a block grants to 4 local universities. That's now expanded significantly into engagement at high school and elementary school level, but more importantly, creating a bridge on the other side of the pipeline, so that once someone gets some STEM-related education, we want to connect them into the national security space, whether that be making a decision to enter the military by putting on a uniform, maybe they become a government civilian, maybe they work in industry, or maybe they do research in the academic space. Whatever it is, we're trying to get all the players on the field. China has more honor students than we have students. And so it is in our national interest to ensure we're getting the best and brightest working in the national security space. We're very proud of the fact that we have won AFCEA's Education Award for 2 of the last 3 years, and we're creating that pipeline to the future. Next slide. On the other side, we have a Wounded Warrior Military Family Endowment, and that gives money to about 17 different organizations that are focused on meeting the needs of wounded warriors and vets, whether that's helping a disabled vet with some accommodation in their home or a working dog, or whether it's providing backpacks for military kids at school. We have a number of avenues there where we're making a difference in the lives of our wounded warriors and our military families every day. Next slide. What are we doing right now with COVID-19? We have kind of turned a corner, and we're focusing on how we help low-income vets, how we help older vets, and those are in a post-rehab situation. And then our education foundation, when all the kids got sent home from school, it really exposed a digital divide. That is, there's an assumption that a lot of folks have made that, hey, if Junior can't go to school, he'll just log on from his computer at home. Well, guess what? A lot of kids don't have a computer at home, or they might have a computer, but they don't have internet connectivity. So we've engaged with the San Antonio ISD to help those in need there. Next slide. As far as chapter activities, we're committed to health and safety. And so although we have suspended in-person events, we have actually increased the number of events that we're doing, and we just do it in a virtual format. So whether those are monthly luncheons, young people's get-togethers for our young AFCEANs, continuing education opportunities, we're doing all of that online. And furthermore, we've made the commitment to the community that we're not going to charge. You don't have to be a member, you don't have to pay, just show up. And we're counting on the fact that after this is over, folks will see the value in that and elect to join their professional association. Next slide. So the last thing I want to mention is our signature event. It's called the Alamo AFCEA Chapter event. It is a 4-day conference. It's held the week before Thanksgiving at the La Cantera Hill Country Resort. As I said, about 2,800 folks attended last year. We have big names from the Pentagon, from major commands, from of course, from local units here in Central Texas. And we bring those people together with industry folks. So we have over 100 exhibitors there. Anyone that's involved in IT and the defense health space is there. And so we're looking forward to a great event this year. We are on the fence about whether that's going to be in person or virtual. So we're going to follow the guidelines and we'll make a decision whether we're going left or right, but there definitely will be an event this year. And then the last thing I'll mention is you're very fortunate that you've got Bill Robinson on the line with you. If any of this interested you or you thought, gee, that's me, I'm in the IT space or the cyberspace and I'd like to get involved with this, he's the guy to talk to. Not only is he the Vice President of Membership for the Alamo chapter, but he's a member of the AFCEA International Board of Directors, and he is the co-chair of the AFCEA International Membership Committee. So anything you need to know about membership, Bo can get you hooked up. That's it, Kevin.
Awesome. So I am going to stop my screen share really quickly. Having some technical issues. I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to ask actually Rebecca if she wouldn't mind pulling those slides up because I can't actually see my screen while I'm sharing those slides. And I want to be able to see you guys. So I want to follow up a little bit from what you just said before we go into the next part of the topic, which is going to be talking about Defense Academy. AFCEA, Alamo AFCEA actually just participated in an indirect way, well, a direct and an indirect way, in our Fed Supernova event. Accenture came to you guys and asked if you would help them feature the Texas cybersecurity ecosystem, which is anchored in San Antonio. You guys pulled together a dozen different organizations and companies and participants to talk through all of the really great things happening in San Antonio. That was absolutely fantastic, and I think your participation in that virtual event really made the content better. It made the audience's experience so much better, and I know it made Accenture happy. Second thing I'll say is to your comment about you haven't made the decision yet about going live or virtual, AUSA just mentioned today, or just announced today, that they're taking their annual meeting in Washington, D.C. that's usually held in the second week of October, that brings in tens of thousands of people from industry and government and the Army across the country. They're going to make that a virtual event. So that one will be the biggest one that I have become aware of, if they're able to pull it off at the scale. So it's going to be interesting to see the evolution of these events. So let me ask you a question though. I'm not sure that I fully got it from your pitch, and I want to make sure that our audience really understands. So there's a bunch of different, professional organizations or associations around, the Department of Defense space. You've got, the Association of the U.S. Army, the Air Force Association, the National Defense Industry Association, AFCEA, and there are even some really small ones like the Texas Defense Innovation Forum that I started. So tell us what AFCEA is and how it differentiates from those others.
Sure. So best way to tell that is by personal example. So I was an Air Force officer for 28 years. I retired in 2013. But back when I started as a brand new second lieutenant in tech school, the instructor came into the class one day and said, lieutenants, there's two organizations you need to belong to. As Air Force officers, you need to belong to the Air Force Association, because that is the heritage association that brings all Air Force folks together. And as computer, cyber, IT folks, you need to belong to AFCEA. And that's AFCEA's unique role. That is, we bring that military and homeland security, IT, cyber, and intelligence community together. So that's what differentiates us from some of the others.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's great, because really that's the profile of the companies that we're typically working with. I mean, Capital Factory companies and the types of companies that are engaging with this content are not building tanks or helicopters, but they might be building a sensor or writing an algorithm or have a cyber monitoring technology, tons of artificial intelligence companies. And it sounds like those are exactly the profile of companies that could get some value from connecting through AFCEA.
Absolutely. A lot of our members derive value. So our industry folks get value in a couple of ways. One, we serve as a great mixing bowl. For a capture manager, it provides a pool where he can reach out and touch, whether he needs the resources of a large defense firm or he's looking for perhaps a woman-owned small business, or he's looking for someone who has a company that has a niche capability. We provide those, or we bring those together. And then the flip side is we provide those opportunities for networking and getting insights into, okay, what's the Army really trying to do with this program, or what is the Air Force trying to accomplish by creating their new information warfare numbered Air Force. So we provide those kind of opportunities.
Fantastic. I think Bill was going to say something and we jumped on him.
Yeah, no worries. I'm just going to give you an example from my perspective. I retired as a senior non-commissioned officer in the Air Force after 21 years, but focused on the cybersecurity ranks. And but being enlisted, I was a member of the Air Force Sergeants Association my entire career. And after I retired, I was in the cybersecurity realm. I got into the Information System Security Association because I was doing more on the cybersecurity side, until one day my boss says, "Hey, I need you to cover an AFCEA luncheon for me." I'm like, "What is AFCEA?" And he's like, "Well, it's stuff for industry partners or whatever." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I want to go over here." And he's like, "Yeah, but I need you to go over there." Right. Then I started to doing more with AFCEA and learn that if you wanted to grow your company's capabilities in government contracting, this is the place to be. This is the association for that. And that is where, like Rick mentioned, we're adding a lot of value to a lot of industry partners to be able to bring that entire mixing bowl, introduce them to a lot of different aspects of government contracting.
Well, fantastic. So let's go ahead and move on and talk about Defense Academy. So I mentioned previously that we had, when we were looking back at year one, we saw that a lot of our companies had seen a lot of success engaging with a range of innovation cells or DoD innovation programs, and we tried to understand what was the common denominator, what was the thing that made them so successful, and we determined that obviously they had to be aware that these programs exist, and so that's really what this AMA is all about. They needed some information about how to access the programs, but also about the types of challenges and pitfalls that they might face as a company going against or trying to go after DoD customers and U.S. government customers for the first time. And so that information really is what Defense Academy is all about. And then the relationships for people that can help you. And you'll form those relationships by connecting with Capital Factory's defense-focused events, by connecting with the Defense Academy, or with the SBIR Accelerator, which I'll touch on a little bit after we go over Defense Academy. But relationships are important not just for our companies, they're important for us. Capital Factory is a startup accelerator. We are not a DoD technology program. And the Army and the Air Force and the Defense Innovation Unit and the Texas Military Department, they didn't come to Capital Factory because they wanted to connect with Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, although some companies like that are here now. They came to Capital Factory because they wanted to connect to a startup ecosystem focused on technology that had the key ingredients to make a really good startup ecosystem, such as lots of venture capital, lots of startups, lots of great talent fed by universities, big customers that can help scale these companies. And that's exactly what was happening. So at Capital Factory, we've had to reach out to partners because, again, we don't have all of this expertise. And that's what this relationship with AFCEA is all about. So some of the things we're pretty good at talking about, but other things we really need to pull in partners. And I'm super excited about this iteration of Defense Academy because we've got so many great folks that are contributing to the content. So I just want to go over a framework of what it is, and I want to remind our audience that the name of this event is an AMA, Ask Me Anything, and so we really only have about 35 minutes of us talking, and the rest of the time it's supposed to be answering your questions. So if you have questions, post them in the chat. We'll see them in our comments section, and we will certainly address them. But Defense Academy is intended to be that overview of those topics. So it starts from very basic to what are the different DoD innovation cells, the contract types, and what do you do? And then we do a deep dive into one of those topics, which is the AFWERX SBIR open topic. That block will be presented by a company called Long Capture. They have a ton of experience since the open topic was founded about 3 years ago in helping companies connect to phase 2 customers, get successful phase 2 awards. And again, you can be awarded $750K up to $1.5 million to build that phase 2 product for that Air Force customer. And so a deep dive on that program, because it's one of the biggest programs that our companies have had the most success leveraging. And then day 2 is really going to be about, kind of getting more into the traditional industry stuff. Because once you get a phase 2 and you perform successfully, maybe you want to actually become a habitual defense contractor. Maybe you want to try to grow your business on the back of some defense programs. So, Bill, would you like to tell us a little bit about what they're going to get on day 2?
Sure. So we're going to start off, Mr. Joe Dominguez is going to be talking about how small businesses, startup companies can actually work with some traditional prime contractors today and some of the nuances that go with that. Give you that big brother assist on, hey, if you want to get in this world, here's some things you want to know about. So that looking forward to hearing Joe talk about that. He's been doing this for a long time. After that, I'm going to actually talk about some of those cyber companies that came through the AFWERX program there, getting their phase 1s and 2s, and how to go to phase 3. My company's been doing cyber since the mid-'80s when the program first started, and we've been very successful. So looking forward to passing on a little bit of information there on to help those companies take it to the next step, which is the ultimate. And then obviously we're going to turn that over to Rick, and he's going to talk about the different professional associations. Rick, you want to tell us more?
Sure, just an opportunity for those who aren't familiar to understand what is a professional association and why should I consider joining one. It's not for everybody, and there are a number of different professional associations out there, but we'll go through what AFCEA brings to the table. We'll talk about some of the others, as you heard earlier, AUSA, AFA, NDIA. Think of any combination of letters that ends in an A, and there's probably an organization out there. But we'll talk a little bit about what those are and how those can help you in maturing your personal capabilities and your corporate capabilities, and to make you more responsive when you're trying to get to market.
Awesome. And so, again, you have to start out with understanding what the programs are, understanding how to access those programs, and then understanding kind of how you're going to use that to grow your business into this DoD customer base and industry. But along the way, there are some things that are going to potentially trip you up, or certainly some things that you need to know about. And these are the more advanced technical topics. So we're going to have a block talking about CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. Obviously, one of the hot button topics within the DoD technology and contracting space for 2020. So do one of y'all want to explain for our audience very basically what CMMC is and why they would want to participate in that block on August 19th?
Sure, Kevin, I'll be glad to do that. So if you think about it, a small business who builds a software capability and shrink wraps that, sells that for a living. And if you go to your local hospital or your local industry business in your town, they can add it to their network, no questions asked. It's their network, they can do that. The government doesn't allow that. In order to get your software on a network and actually get it to run, they have to check out the cybersecurity, because you could obviously understand the military impact, the mission impact, if there was one vulnerability. So all that software has to be checked and before it ever gets loaded on the network. And some of those, the NIST security standards, to even now as we're moving to the cloud, and you got cloud service providers out there. The FedRAMP program is the program, the federally oversight program, to ensure that cloud service providers are secure as well for that military data. But CMMC now is taking it down one step further, and we say, well, these government contractors, these industry partners who are running some of our contracts, they've got our data on their corporate networks. And maybe we should look at how they do business and how secure is their corporate network. So CMMC is a new program. It's still rolling out. There's a lot of committees that have been established at that level, and they basically set up a maturity model for the different levels of cybersecurity. And based on your capabilities and how that's going to be sold, will determine how much trust the government will have in order for you to produce and get a government contract. So it's a great introduction and a guide in order to ensure whatever your commercial capability is ready for the government.
Fantastic. And then day 4 is the one that really excites me, because we've got a lot of really great speakers coming in, and these are some of the harder topics as well. So we're going to start off with some introductory comments from John Serafini. John Serafini is the CEO of Hawkeye 360. If you follow the space industry and small sat clusters, probably have heard of Hawkeye. Hawkeye's raised nearly $100 million through traditional venture capital raising, as well as strategic partners such as Airbus and Raytheon. John Serafini is also an investor, as he recently started a fund that's focused on primarily A-round investments, but they'll go a little smaller and a little larger. And their investment thesis is focused on companies that are dual use in serving the national security space. John is also my West Point classmate, so I'm super excited to bring him in and have y'all hear from him. And he's been through a few startups, so he understands the ropes of starting, scaling, and exiting a company, particularly inside the DoD and national security space. The next speaker, or the next topic, I should say, and it's one that every entrepreneur in this space ultimately has to face, and that's intellectual property. And it's better if you face it earlier rather than later, because it can, even through the context of an SBIR phase 2 submission under the AFWERX open topic, it can really set the stage for how that product gets treated in a phase 3. And there's lots of different things that you should understand with respect to intellectual property and dealing with the government, such as government purpose rights, SBIR data rights, technical data, how to mark technical data, and all of that. So you definitely don't want to miss Jana. Jana is currently a corporate counselor for Northrop Grumman, but she's got a long career. She's a member of the U.S. Federal Patent Bar. She is a well-known space attorney. She practices space law, intellectual property, and government contracting, and has directed strategy and innovation from the legal policy perspective for companies like Facebook, as well as within law firms and in the traditional defense industry companies. And then finally, we're going to cap off the day with a presentation from Katie Arrington, who's the new director, highly qualified expert and director of the DoD's Trusted Capital Marketplace. So the DoD started the Trusted Capital Marketplace late last year because they recognized that certain critical industries, one of which being the drone industry and another being quantum, are attracting a lot of investment from places that would make the U.S. government not want to do business with them. And so the DoD Trusted Capital Marketplace is a network of vetted investors whose funds will, if a company takes an investment from your fund, it will not increase, or it will not affect the foreign ownership, influence, and control, FOIC, which is kind of the buzzword of ITAR. But understanding the impact when you're fundraising of taking on foreign dollars, understanding the impact of foreign board seats or foreign ownership of portions of your company, or non-citizen developers working on critical products are certainly things that startups need to know, and that content or that block from Katie should be really good. Of course, this is going to be a Capital Factory Academy, so we're going to have networking and we're going to have Epic Office Hours. Epic Office Hours is going to provide you, if you participate in this academy, with a chance to meet with DoD program customers, with a chance to meet with investors, and a chance to meet with some traditional industry companies, most of whom are probably AFCEA members if they're going to be coming to this academy. So we're super excited about that. We're going to go to questions in 1 minute, but first I want to go to the next slide, which is putting the Defense Academy in context. So I have mentioned the AFWERX SBIR open topic, and the reason why we do the Defense Academy when we do it is because we time this with the opening of the 20.3 open topic, or the 20.3 SBIR cycle. So the way that the SBIR cycle runs is every 4 months, they will have a new topic cycle, 20.1, 20.2, 20.3 for the SBIR side, and then 20.A, 20.B, 20.C for the STTR side. And the one that's been the most attractive to our companies is the X topic, which is from AFX, which is the AFWERX special topic, open topic that anybody can participate in. And really it's the Air Force looking for, not to describe exactly what they want you to work on, but they're going to give you some broad technology focus areas such as cybersecurity or machine learning, and see what you guys have to propose. And that topic has been a great vehicle for a lot of our companies to again win a big part of that $63 million. So how are we going to use the Defense Academy as a way to help you guys be successful in the 20.3 open topic cycle? Well, we're doing the Defense Academy the 17th to the 20th of August. The very next week is when the 20.3 cycle topics are going to be pre-announced. And then the pre-announcements are open for 30 days, and then the submission window through DSIP, the Defense Small Business Innovation Portal, which is the place that you go to submit your SBIR proposals, will be open from the 23rd of September through the 22nd of October. Concurrently with that submission window being open, the Capital Factory SBIR Accelerator application cycle will be open. So you'll be able to submit an application saying, hey, we've submitted a phase 1 application on the open topic SBIR. Fill out an application for the Capital Factory's SBIR Accelerator. We will evaluate those applications and pull in about 40 to 50 companies to participate. And As long as you get that phase 1 award, then you'll be eligible to participate in the SBIR Accelerator. Those applications will be due on the 26th of October, which is the Monday following the close of the 20.3 cycle application window, and then we will do an assessment in November. We're going to do a kickoff summit in December, and then we will run the cohort until the phase 2 applications are due. And so we will continue to run this program again every 4 months, kicked off with the Defense Academy and rolling into the SBIR Accelerator program, which is tied to that phase 1 period of performance. So I think with that, we can probably pull the charts down and go to questions. So the first question from Brian is, how is the Army handling security clearances to make it easier for small businesses to collaborate with them? And I think we can probably remove the word Army from that question and say, how are the various DoD innovation agencies and cells handling security clearances? But I will throw that question to the group. Rick or Bill, do y'all have a perspective on Brian's question?
Well, I can tell you, the services are still working with the JPAS system, the Joint Personnel Adjudication System, in order to get individual clearances through. But the hardest part is for a lot of these small businesses that want to bid on contracts. One of the mandates is that they have a facilities clearance, which is really the clearance for the company itself as a whole, as a baseline. And I've taken a commercial company through that process before. You've got key personnel that have to be identified. A lot of paperwork has to be done. And the Defense Security Service is that independent party. They'll have adjudicators come out. They'll validate the company's capabilities. And then once they get that facilities clearance, then they can have individuals based on a particular contract can go through and actually get individual security clearance based on whatever security levels required for that government contract. Hopefully that's kind of what Brian was looking at, unless he's looking specifically for something more advanced.
Yeah, that's a great job of explaining kind of how the security clearance and adjudication process works. I will tell you that having worked with a ton of companies that are doing business with the DoD for the first time, security clearances are not supposed to be a problem, but they can become a problem. They can become a limiting factor. And I'll just say, as an example, we've had a lot of the special operations community come through here, and their special operations community is looking for data solutions. They're looking for people that can run algorithms on their data sets. They're looking for folks that can create synthetic data for them. They're looking for folks that can come in and access their data. And frequently those data sets are held on classified networks and in classified systems. And so it becomes a little bit of a challenge. The rule still is that if the program, until you actually win a program that has a clearance requirement, then there is no need for you to get a clearance. And if at the moment that you win such a program, you will have to apply for an FCL, a facility clearance, which is basically your organization has the authorization to maintain security clearances and hold classified information. And then there's two sides of it. There's the facilities and the holding of the information part of it, and then there's also the clearance of your personnel and the number of authorizations you're going to be allowed. It's a lot easier when you get into classified space to work with a partner, such as somebody from industry that you might meet at an AFCEA event or at an AUSA event or even at a Capital Factory event, because we have tons of industry partners coming through our space. Lisa, thanks for the question about registration, and I can't believe that I didn't lead with that we do have an open Eventbrite. I will say that with the Eventbrite, we're asking folks to register for each individual day that we're going to attend. We want you to attend as much of it as you want to attend, but we also want to keep track of what content folks are connecting to and how they are connecting to it. So Lawrence's question, which is the background for the Center for Autonomous Robotics. Yeah, awesome. Lawrence, happy to tell you more. So again, it's going to be a co-working space, maker space, an accelerator space, similar to Capital Factory, except exclusively focused on trying to attract from across the ecosystem things that are going to enable the production of autonomous and drone technologies. So what does that mean? Well, I talked about Trusted Capital before. One of the first DoD Trusted Capital events that they did was actually out at Texas A&M University late last summer. And it was focused on drones. Drones is the first key technology that the DoD has identified where the supply chain primarily runs through China. China is a country we don't have a whole lot of trust in when we want to try to put technology in the hands of our warfighters in secure classified spaces, things like that. And so we're going to be trying to recruit. We are recruiting, investors that are going to be connecting through the Center for Autonomous Robotics that will be able to provide you with trusted, clean capital for your company. We're going to be connecting with tons of different robotics and autonomy companies and drone manufacturers and drone producers. And they've already, Colin and our memberships department have already pre-sold roughly 90% of the memberships that we can have there for the Center for Autonomous Robotics. So if you are interested, I certainly hope that Rebecca will throw up in the chat window memberships at Capital Factory, because you definitely want to reach out to them. But we also have a ton of interest from the traditional defense industry. And a lot of these systems are going to have to be integrated and delivered by a traditional systems integrator, or at least in partnership with a traditional systems integrator. So companies that you've heard of like General Dynamics Land Systems and Bell Flight and BAE Systems, and companies that are in our Innovation Council and some that aren't, are going to be participating in the Center for Autonomous Robotics, as well as big software and cloud provider companies. And again, we're attracting all the things that you would need. So it's the communications, it's the 5G, it's all of it, and you're going to be able to connect to capital, build a product, test a product, integrate it into the network, all through the Center for Autonomous Robotics. It would be open already. We were getting ready to launch this thing right before COVID hit and closed down all the physical spaces. And so now it's just on hold, really until we get a better idea of when physical spaces are going to reopen and what they're going to be like. But bringing those companies and those partners together is still a huge goal, and we are going to do through the Center for Defense Innovation. So Angel, is procurement the first point of contact, or is there a better way to reach a broad audience across the different branches of government agencies to see where we can partner on opportunities? That seems to me like the kind of thing that AFCEA is organized to do for these companies. So would one of you guys like to answer that?
Yeah, I'll throw a start on that question. So Angel, every government agency has a small business advocate office, which is really your first step to get into the government space, to be able to talk with that organization, either to explain your capabilities and or to find out where they're posting their opportunities, like the one you mentioned with the educational side of it. There are a number of them. There's some commercial sites that used to be known by FedBizOps. Now it's beta.sam.gov, and commercial subscriptions like GovWin and so forth that tracks a lot of these contracts. But so you can learn about the different opportunities. But really, your first stop in an organization is not going to be the procurement folks, because most times you can't even find out who's actually going to be who the contracting officer that's been assigned for that particular opportunity. But your small business advocate is your representative, so it's a great stop there with that person. And a lot of them are listed right on their organizational website. And actually, one thing the Alamo AFCEA chapter is about to do will work. We've got a small business committee putting a lot of that together. So when you join the Alamo AFCEA chapter, you're going to have access to all those small business advocates, one-stop shop to get that whole list. And the teams are putting that all together. But right now, you can go out on the web and you can do the searching yourself. But your small business advocate is who I would recommend you start with.
That's a great put. I would agree with what Bill said completely. A couple of other ideas I would offer to you is, if you have an idea of what operational area your particular innovation or capability would support, go to that area. You will find that operators who have compelling needs are going to be more interested in talking to you. And frankly, you're going to be more effective dialoguing at that level than you will with an acquisition officer who's focused on complying with the federal acquisition regulation and not violating any rules, rather than talking to you and seeing how your innovation or your new technology might fit. The other thing I would recommend is look for opportunities to network. So I'm really glad that Kevin foot stomped the networking component of this Defense Academy that's coming up. What you know is important. Who you know is critical. And so you never know what you don't know. I'm backing myself into a corner with all the no's here, but the point I want to make is when you network with others, you're going to get connected to people and organizations that may have some information that's helpful to you and will get you linked up to that next opportunity. So don't miss those opportunities to network with others in the business.
Yeah, Rick, you've got the Alamo AFCEA is one of those professional associations, and you're going to talk more about that next month. The different ones, but a lot of them will have regularly scheduled events. Keynote luncheon speakers, where you want to watch for those things. So if your company does have a capability that you think that speaker has he or she is representing of that organization, and go to those events, or now dial in the virtual programs. A lot of them are free. You can listen to that. But here's your way to network with those key leaders that Rick was talking about, that are the program managers and or the senior leaders in those organizations that represent that mission area that you've got a capability. Because if you don't know who to go talk to, professional associations provide you that opportunity to network and meet those people, whether live or virtual. But that's why we get such great attendance at our events, monthly lunches, because they'll come in, they'll get a chance to slip that senior leader their business card and ask them a question, say, how do I follow up with you? And they give you those points of contact, and you're able to get it to the next level and work it all the way through the system.
Yeah, I'll definitely echo what Rick said about finding an operator that wants to use your product is certainly a better pathway. In fact, it's kind of the whole point of the way that the DoD is moving. What I tell companies that we work with, and again, Capital Factory is really about startups. And these companies are not sophisticated defense vendors. And so I tell these companies two things. One is focus on the programs that they're building specifically to connect to you, like traditional contracting. You're going to have a really hard time competing, although there are, small business set-asides and, other preferences that you can get if you're a service-disabled veteran-owned business or something like that. But that traditional contracting space, there's a lot of other companies out there that have expertise, and it's gonna be really hard to compete against those types of companies when you're submitting traditional proposals, sealed bids, those kinds of things against FAR-based contracting. But the innovation space, the DIU commercial solutions opening, the SBIR open topic, the Navy's new SBIR technology acceleration program, AFWERX challenges, all of those kinds of things. Those programs are designed specifically for you. And so that's really the space where you have the competitive advantage in this industry. And I like to focus on those. And all of those programs really are about connecting your emerging technology to a warfighter to solve that warfighter's problem. So if it doesn't relate to that user, you're not gonna win. And you have to have the user integration in the performance period. And the second thing is you really should be focused on a commercial product. You should ideally already have a commercial product that has a military application. That's the next big piece. And that's where you can, from your business's perspective, you can use money from these DoD innovation programs to offset money that you would have had to raise from VCs, giving up your equity, and everybody wins. You win because you get to raise money, you get to get funding, build a product without giving up your equity. The Department of Defense wins because they're getting a range of technology solutions from companies that are on the cutting edge. And your customers win because they're going to get the best of both worlds in terms of speed and product with good testing and good data. So let's go to Angel's other question, because I think it's a good one. How do you recommend reaching out to the DoD regarding opportunities to partner around tech education in the areas for the K-12 space? So this is what I would pose as a category of company or question that's outside of MDO. So MDO is this concept known as multi-domain operations. And the Department of Defense has determined that it needs to be able to operate not only as it has for the last century on the ground, on the sea, and in the air, but they also need to be able to operate in cyberspace and in outer space. And so those 5 domains and the integration of those 2 new domains of space and cyber has resulted in this concept known as multi-domain operations. And that's really where all the technology comes into play. It's advanced communications, it's small sat, it's a bunch of cybersecurity, different approaches and products and services around cybersecurity. But it's the artificial intelligence, the machine learning, the natural language processing, the sensors, the compute power at the edge, the cloud, the things that are going to enable all those applications to happen. Your question and your product falls outside of that bucket. If you're in that bucket, really all the new pathways are kind of geared towards finding those artificial intelligence, virtual reality type of technologies. Ed tech and health tech are 2 spaces that I get a lot of questions from companies where, there's not really an easy pathway. AFWERX just completed a review of submissions for their Base of the Future challenge, which is really a broad challenge. They want to build a city. They want to build a military base at a Tyndall, which is in Florida, which was destroyed by a hurricane. They want to build it, and a military base is basically just a city. They want to build it in the most advanced and modern way that they possibly can. And so they're asking for a range of solutions, and it's everything. It's how do we feed people? How do we get them connected to, cable providers and internet? How do they shop? How do they fill up their cars? How do they power their homes? How do they teach their children? How do they teach their employees? Like all of these different types of potential technologies. So that's a way for companies like that to connect. You can always submit an open topic SBIR under kind of the blue sky theory and try to go find a customer. But those are quite frankly a little harder. Since COVID, I feel like they've gotten better in the defense space, or better in the health tech space. And really Army Futures Command's Medical Research and Development Command down in Dietrich, but it has some elements in San Antonio, has become a lot more active as well as of late. Creating pathways for these types of companies, but that's a harder question. Rick or Bill, do you guys have any perspective on how a company like that can break into the DoD?
Yeah, so my first thought was, I don't know if she's Angel specific to K through 12, but there are a number of military organizations that are in the education space, looking for, as Kevin mentioned, right? Here in Military City, USA, San Antonio, we've got the Air Education and Training Command, which is responsible for training all of our airmen, a number of different educational facilities to include the Air University across the nation. Never mind some of the schoolhouses that do our cyber and our intel and all the stuff that Kevin had mentioned. Huge military medicine education and training over at Fort Sam Houston. So we have a number of educational institutions, and based on your solutions for K through 12, they actually may apply to the schoolhouses that we have for the military. So, and once again, goes back to the same thing. Find the operator like Kevin and Rick was talking about. If you don't know who that is, talk to your small business advocate in those organizations. And they can help guide you and point you to the right direction. Rick, any other thoughts?
Yeah, Air Education and Training Command is your best window into any Air Force related education and training opportunities generally. And if they are not managing the program, they can point you in the right direction. Similarly, the other services have training commands or education entities. And let's face it, the services are all focused on how do we better incorporate technology to make our training more efficient, to drive down cost. So there's a lot of focus and a lot of effort in that area right now. Not specific to K through 12. And for that piece, I know there are some joint DoD, Department of Education kind of efforts, but frankly, I'm not familiar with the details on those. But that's another area you might look if you're really trying to target the K through 12 space.
Yeah, you know, Rick mentioned K through 12. Texas has independent school districts, so on the bases we have K through 12 schools, but those are independent school districts, and you can go directly to them and be able to showcase your capabilities.
So we're going to knock out a couple of questions here really quick. Jay Fraser, I am going to ask you to maybe rephrase the question because I'm not sure that I understand it. So I'm going to give you a chance to answer it again or to ask it again, and we'll go on to another one. Bill Kleinbecker, what about a drone application? Would it qualify for the Center for Autonomous Robotics? Yeah, I mean, if you are making applications that help drones function better, that help users operate or navigate drones, then yeah, absolutely. Really, the whole idea of that is to bring together all the different types of technologies that enable autonomy and that enable drone drones to operate and to provide functions. Those are the types of things that the car is intended to bring together, so that those applications really can become systems. Because most of these companies, especially the DoD, they don't want to buy applications; they want to buy systems, and the systems have to be able to perform all of those functions and applications. So this next question is squarely in your wheelhouse, Bill. If a company founder is interested in an AFCEA membership to network with primes, agencies, etc., is it better to do an individual membership or a corporate membership?
I love that question. Yeah, Star, obviously it depends on the size of your company and what makes sense. Glad to have a conversation with you offline. I can be reached at vpmembership@alamofca.org and talk you through whether it makes sense for your company to first start off as individuals, get a couple of those. But if you're ready for that level and you're interested in the number of corporate benefits that AFCEA International brings, along with the package of individual memberships, we can talk about that too. And actually, one of the things the Alamo chapter does is we help small businesses get their corporate membership. So if you are a small business and you're interested in that, the Alamo chapter will help you with your first year funding of corporate membership to introduce you to the capabilities and get you started. And that comes with some personal guidance on how to use that most effectively. So look forward to following up with you offline.
That's Bill. It's good to hear you say that. So there is this traditional, industry, and even some of the parts of the traditional industry that are slightly non-traditional. And I'm thinking like OTA consortium are still kind of traditional, and they're hard to access for startups. And so some organizations, I think, have been better than others at creating pathways for startups. So if you start by accepting the premise that drove the change back in 2016, which was that there is enough venture capital, there's enough risk capital being deployed out there in the types of technologies that the DoD wants to access, that the DoD needs to create programs and pathways that incentivize venture-backed companies, startups, to want to work with them. You start with that basic premise. That means that, that the DoD program managers should be really creating ways for startups to get connected to their opportunities, and the industry associations that serve those DoD programs and that serve that industry should also be creating pathways for non-traditionals and startups to get connected. And I will say some, like, we work with, just as an example, NAMC, the National Advanced Mobility Consortium. They have space on the 8th floor in Capitol Factory. They're one of only two non-DoD entities that do, because I would consider them to be a quasi-DoD entity, because they basically deploy through their other transaction agreement money for the Army from the Ground Vehicle Systems Center out to non-traditional companies using OTA awards. And they have created, through the Innovation Combine, pathways for companies to not have to join them until it's really absolutely necessary to join them, and also driving down fees for smaller companies to be able to join. So in that regards, I actually would like to I want to ask my own question, which is, tell me about ACE, and tell me about how ACE is going to help, these venture-backed companies, non-traditionals, small innovators connect to this defense technology ecosystem down in San Antonio.
So Rick, before you jump in on that, can I just talk to a point that Kevin had made was, AFCEA started back in 1947, right? It was all about, as Rick mentioned, the ethical exchange of information between industry, government, academia. And just like the CIBR program, when it started in the 80s, it's all about finding the leading edge technology, these startup companies that have these that on the cutting edge technologies, and bring them into the government. and truly the partnership with an in that ecosystem with the Capital Factory and bringing South Texas together, Military City, USA, with what you guys are doing across the state of Texas is helping to bridge that gap and keeping that conversation going and bringing giving these companies the opportunity to come together, and it accumulates with what we're doing at the Alamo ACE and some of the things that Rick's about to tell you that we're going to try to roll out at this year's ACE.
Yeah, so there's a couple of answers to that question. One, you're going to get a lot of insights about what are government's current problems and what are the things that what are the pain points that they're trying to solve, which is great, frankly, free intelligence for you in understanding, how might my innovation, my product, my service help support that need. Secondly, through exhibitors that are there, you're going to have an opportunity to interface with any number of different companies, some big, some small, and undoubtedly you will find some that are in a space that you're looking to operate in, that you'll have opportunity to talk to and learn more from. And then through the networking forums, you're going to have an opportunity just to interface there with others who can give you some insights as to what's going on. Now, more specifically to Kevin's point, we've started reaching out very specifically to try and bring groups together in two different axes. One is in the geographic domain, we want to bring Austin and San Antonio closer together. There is some fantastic innovation work that's being done in Austin. San Antonio has a very well-established, more traditional military base. We want to bring those communities together so that government organizations that may have just recently stood up in Austin have an opportunity to interface with organizations that have been around a while longer in San Antonio. And just as importantly, we want organizations in San Antonio, particularly those government organizations, to learn about this burgeoning ecosystem that's growing in the defense innovation space in Austin. And then just bringing traditional and innovation communities together, regardless of where they sit. That's another area we're focused on. So new for the 2020 ACE, we're going to have a half day that is focused specifically on innovation and startups. So we don't have the details of that refined yet, but we have made an agreement with Capital Factory, Geekdom, and others to put something together that is going to speak to this community specifically and get them better plugged in with the rest of the defense establishment that has an established track record at the ACE.
Rick, I think we probably need to get somebody to pony up some money so that we can do an innovation challenge, because that always gets a lot of folks in the door, and they're really fun to watch. So we'll see if we can iterate on that idea, but I think it's going to be good. So I'm going to go to Star's question next, which is, are DoD innovation programs suitable for innovation services or just products? An example would be program project management as a service, specifically for machine learning and AI delivery. So let's start with, it depends on the type of innovation program, and it also depends on the customer itself. So let's start with SBIR, because SBIR really is the preferred vehicle. Air Force pioneered this with the open topic and changing the way that they not only publish topics but evaluate submissions, and really the idea that they wanted to bring in more volume. They're awarding over 400 phase one awardees every cycle. The Navy has followed with their SBIR technology acceleration program, which is more focused topics, but still not as narrow as they used to be. And then AAL is kind of the third to the plate. They had 3 topics this last time. They had a direct to phase 2, actually, as well, using the SBIR program. So SBIR, I really think, is a good point of entry for lots of companies. SBIR is for research, not for services. I will foot stomp that as if we're back in, History 101. SBIR is for research, not for services. However, the Air Force really has made a hole in that rule big enough to drive lots of trucks through. And that is exactly the kind of question that you would want to come to Defense Academy to find out the answer to. Long Capture, who's going to be presenting our deep dive on SBIR Air Force Open topic, they can help you understand how to write a proposal so that your service looks like a product. And I will tell you that SaaS, you're not delivering a service. You're delivering a seat license, or you're delivering some kind of a capability. You're just not. They're not buying the product. But and also with SaaS type of programs, particularly if it's something that you're customizing or building bespoke for the military, that's where you really have to understand the IP implications as well of that platform. So the answer, again, SBIR is for research, not for service, but you can provide research by exposing the customer to your service and having them solve a problem in a novel way. And that's really the short answer to that question, but it really depends on how you describe it in the proposal.
Yeah, Kevin, I can tell you my company's been in the cyber business for 35 years, and the software solutions that we build, and you're right, 90% of the cyber world is a product, is a widget, but there's a lot of software solutions that are bought too and built through that program. And we now use these software solutions to do services. So it has to be most of the capabilities brought through the cyber program are usually very niche because they're built for a specific customer, but there's the potential to, and that's the value of the phase 2, to find a customer who wants to take it and tweak it to their use. And then you may find there's a capability to be able to do that. And that's what my company does now with Cyber Phase 3s, using our products, software solutions to do services work. So there's the potential, but it's not a perfect fit for everybody, for sure.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go to Rick Tett's question about the CF Cyber Accelerator. And he asks, is there a cost to participate in the Capital Factory SBIR Accelerator? And the answer to that question is yes, but not a cost to you. It's a cost to the sponsor. So our first pilot, Microsoft, was not only a financial sponsor, but also a committed partner to that. And it worked out extraordinarily well because they put their dollars behind the program. And because they put their dollars behind their program, they also put their people into the program. They met with tons of our companies. They signed tons of letters of support, and they brought a lot of value to those companies that were participating. So no, the participating companies can participate or will participate in the SBIR Accelerator program completely free of charge. And we just want you to connect with Capital Factory. We want you to grow the value of your phase 2 proposal. And if you see value in Capital Factory, we certainly expect a lot of you are going to hang around and become part of our ecosystem. So Steve Chaco's question, what about DFW? The DFW area has better infrastructure. So I agree with you, Stephen, in terms of like the defense community, the defense industry. So what San Antonio has with some kind of communications, electronics, cybersecurity type of companies, Dallas has really in hardware, particularly in the aerospace industry. And I think that Dallas has a huge potential to become another hub for defense innovation. Rick, do you guys have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think your assessment is right on. Obviously, you got the F-35 being built up in Fort Worth. Raytheon's got a big presence up there, Lockheed, others. But the challenge, and we've got, I don't know, 130, 140 members up in the Dallas area that are part of AFCEA. The challenge is you don't have a big, strong government organization that provides a nexus for bringing that community together so far. Now, maybe this innovation ecosystem that you are building may help spur some of that. But that's kind of the difference that I see. San Antonio has depth in a number of different areas, from transportation to education, all the health IT outside of the Defense Health Agency that's in Washington. The rest of it's here. Right. And as you alluded to, anything that's cybersecurity, biggest national security agency footprint outside of Fort Meade, you got a lot of cyber intel and IT here, along with some of those other areas. But certainly, I think there's a lot of potential up in the DFW area.
Yeah, and I've actually had this conversation, I believe, with Stephen before, which is, what I really wanted to do with some of these programs that we developed for our startup community, specifically focused on defense, Defense Academy being one, and the SBIR Accelerator being another, is we wanted to be able to bring those companies to Dallas and San Antonio. Those, to me, were the next two big opportunities for us to take what we had done in Austin. And I'm always careful whenever I'm talking to San Antonio folks that we're not trying to, we don't think that San Antonio needs any help from Austin. But the reality of it is that when we looked at the numbers, we had a ton of startups in Austin that were on the list of companies that had gotten those wins. And the two ecosystems that I really feel like should be the next focus, where we should be getting not just 60 million, but 600 million, from some of these awards, because the programs that are going to connect to the ecosystems in San Antonio and Dallas are potentially bigger programs. I mean, if you're building something that's going to go on to the Future Attack and Reconnaissance Aircraft, which both of the finalist companies are DFW area companies that are working on those prototypes, that's going to be a bigger contract than a $1.5 million, SaaS phase 2 to deliver some seat licenses for data visualization, that's a great thing as well, but you're in a completely different category. One of the really good side effects of COVID-19, fortunately or unfortunately, is it required us to abandon physical presence and get into the virtual space. And so trying to replicate the Defense Academy in Dallas is no longer necessary, because whether you're in Dallas or Dayton, Ohio, or Austin, Texas, or in Alabama, you can connect to this programming without having to leave your house. So I'm super excited about that. Although it has put a little bit of a damper on some of the kind of community connecting things we were trying to do between Austin and San Antonio. So we definitely need to step that up, and I'm looking forward to ACE as another way to do that. So we're closing out. We're out of questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to you guys for some final thoughts and your call to action to this community. Why should these startups want to show up to ACE? Why should they want to connect with you guys? And tell them what to do.
Yeah. So thanks very much, Kevin, for the opportunity. I appreciate it. We're doing great work here. I think bringing big traditional defense tech together with the more nimble and aggressive innovation community. The value of AFCEA is networking. It's professionalism. It is keeping your toolbox current. It's making connections both in government and with other business organizations. And so reach out to us. You can go to our website, alamoafcea.org. In the chat window, you've got Bill's address if you're interested in engaging him on membership. And put that week of 16 to 19 November on your calendar for Alamo ACE, whether it's in person or virtual. You don't want to miss it.
I've already got my hotel reservation. I'll be there either in person or in spirit, depending on how we do it. And so for Capital Factory, if you're interested in learning more about this stuff, there's only so much that we can cover really in 20 to 30 minutes of actually talking about the Defense Academy. But the Defense Academy itself not only is going to be 10 hours of deep dive instruction on these various topics, but also the opportunity to connect with potential customers and program level experts within the DoD during Epic Office Hours, but also to connect to each other during networking. It's so valuable to meet other companies that are trying to break in or have had some success in this DoD innovation space, that are going through the content in the cohort with you, and creating those relationships that are going to help you take it to the next level. Customer discovery being a great example. You will meet somebody who has talked to the customer that you should be talking to, and you can tell them about the customer that you were talking to that didn't really have a use for their product, but might have a use for theirs. It's super powerful. So we definitely want you to connect to Defense Academy. There you will also learn a little bit more about the SBIR Accelerator program, as well as how to apply if you're going after a Phase 1 SBIR in the 20.3 open topic cycle. So that's it. Thank you for connecting with Capital Factory's Defense Innovation Ask Me Anything for the month of July. My name is Kevin Landtroop. I'm the VP of Defense for Capital Factory. Thank you, Rick and Bill from Alamo AFCEA, for joining us today, and we hope to see you all next month.
Thanks for the time, Kevin.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Kevin.